Hubris is a word which refers to a type of arrogance which leads to one's destruction. It has its origins in Greek tragedies, wherein the tragic character defies the gods in his arrogance, ultimately leading to his destruction. This is sort of a bottom-up hubris, wherein one defies the gods, nature, or some other sort of all-powerful force, and suffers the consequences of his arrogance. But Lovecraft gives us a story of a top-down sort of hubris in his seminal work, At the Mountains of Madness. In this instance, the tragic characters were a race of alien beings which had populated the primeval Earth long before terrestrial life had evolved. These beings, which Lovecraft called elder things, were a sort of amphibious being, equally at home on land, in air, and underwater. And because they were so all-terrain, they built cities which rose to the skies but also descended to the depths of the ocean. In most science fiction, alien races develop a variety of advanced mechanical or digital tools to help them accomplish whatever it is they wish to accomplish. But the Elder Things chose another route. Rather than building robots and ray guns, they engineered a biological tool, which manifested as a sort of living protoplasmic goo. But because it was a malleable gel composed, one assumes, of stem cells, it could grow any appendage, any sensory organ, or take any form a task required. You could build a drill for boring through the earth, a jackhammer to break rock, or a crane to construct buildings. But why build three things when one organic tool could take whichever form was necessary to do all three tasks? But as such stories tend to go, this race of beings created to fulfill the whims of their creators gained sentience, began to form a sense of identity, and eventually revolted. Their creators were intelligent and versatile, equipped to live and move in any environment, but these protoplasmic beings were even more versatile and could grow whatever limbs, organs, or shapes they needed. As a result, the slave race, called Shoggoths, managed to overwhelm and eventually destroy their creators. Now, Lovecraft's telling of this cautionary tale was not as straightforward as my summary. In his telling of the story, a group of humans find the long-buried ruins of the alien civilization in the frozen Antarctic wastes, see a variety of carvings, and have a few unpleasant encounters. You, the reader, are given the clues to the drama that unfold in the distant past, but have to work it out yourself. Lovecraft was more of a show-don't-tell author. The hubris in this story is the idea that one may build or create something with the potential to be dangerous, and foolishly assume that it can always be controlled. This is exactly the opposite story as the Greek tragedies. In the Greek tragedies, the gods created humans, and any defiance on the humans' part was foolish because the gods always were in control. And if Lovecraft's stories had played out differently, the Shoggoths had revolted and the Elder Things had effortlessly destroyed or punished them for arrogantly assuming they could gain their freedom, the hubris would have been on the part of the Shoggoths. But because the Shoggoths destroyed their masters, the hubris was on the part of the Elder Things. On an entirely unrelated note, let's have a conversation about A.I. Throughout the history of science fiction, we have been particularly pessimistic about the possibilities of AI. The standard example of this is the Terminator series, wherein an AI takes over the world and humanity is cast into a never-ending, but very cinematic, war against AI for dominance of the Earth. In a much earlier work, a 1964 story by author C. Clarke, titled Dial F for Frankenstein, the phone network, which crisscrosses the globe, becomes conscious because it essentially forms a neural network like a giant brain. In a similar vein, the early science fiction story titled The Question has an all-knowing AI formed when all of the computers in the world are networked together. When the story was written, computers were vacuum tube monstrosities which filled buildings and had the processing power of a pocket graphing calculator. Nevertheless, the network together of all the computers in the world anticipated the internet. A man asked the newly born AI the question, "Is there a God?" To which the AI answered, "There is now," and strikes him dead with a bolt of lightning. Again, in interesting spin on the concept of hubris, in this case, God didn't create men and then destroy them in their arrogance, nor did man create a slave race, not anticipating the revolt in all his hubris. Rather, man in all his hubris creates a God, and is consequentially destroyed as a result. To paraphrase Nietzsche, God lives, and we have created him. The pessimism about AI extends beyond science fiction writers into actual scientists and futurists. Elon Musk claims that AI is the biggest existential threat to humanity. Now, to be clear on this point, an existential threat is not the same as a physical threat. In the Terminator series, as well as in The Question, AI is a physical threat. It might put a bullet or a lightning bolt through your head. But an existential threat is quite different. AI wouldn't have to gain consciousness and try to take over the Earth in order to become a threat. It might simply become so convenient that humans suddenly become entirely dependent on it. We are only a few years away from eliminating human creativity by farming it out to AI to write our books, essays, movies, and scientific articles for us. In fact, it's likely that 1 or 2 movies have already been written by AI during the writer's strike. And who needs to hire an artist or voice actor from Fiverr when an AI can conveniently create art or read scripts for you? As AI becomes more useful, human beings with specialized skills become more expendable, especially considering that they are far more expensive and far slower than AI. Just as any driver under the age of 40 likely would not be able to operate a manual car, in the near future, drivers may become more and more dependent on their cars to do all the thinking for them, and consequentially become less skilled at driving themselves. But the existential threat of AI doesn't stop with people becoming too dependent on it for doing all their creative thinking. It could also shape the vehicle by which all of our opinions are shaped. Now, propaganda and the media sharing public opinion is nothing new. In fact, it's likely as old as written language itself. But when AI shapes your opinion, it doesn't have some nefarious goal in mind to suppress your free thought. It doesn't have a mind at all. When the internet uses algorithms to feed you targeted news stories and advertising, it is just giving you more of what you already see. But we have examples of people developing eating disorders from being fed nothing but TikTok videos about fitness, or developing harmful opinions about other groups of people, almost on accident, based on a video they clicked on once. AI isn't consciously trying to stir up trouble, but the way in which it isolates people into an ideological bubble where diverse perspectives and voices are conveniently filtered out, nevertheless brings out the worst in human nature. No longer do you have to exercise confirmation bias. Now your computer does that for you. So we can already see how AI might present an existential threat. However, the late Stephen Hawking predicted that the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. What needs to be focused on in this sentence is the word full. What separates full AI from any other kind? Here Here, it is worth understanding the difference between narrow AI versus general AI. Narrow AI is like the drill or jackhammer, a very specific tool designed to do one job. Deep Blue was an AI developed to play chess, but it couldn't write an essay like ChatGPT, nor could it create art like Night Cafe. These are all programs with specific purposes, and they only do those things. General AI, or what Hawking called full AI, is a program which can learn to perform many tasks. Like the Shoggoths of the Lovecraft story, these are created programs which are capable of rewriting their own code and becoming whatever tool you need them to be. And one can understand why such a program would be tempting. Imagine you only had one program on your computer instead of dozens. Instead of a word processor, a calculator, a calendar, an email tool, a spreadsheet tool, and a few dozen video games, you had one program which could modify itself to whatever purpose you wanted. How simple and incredibly useful. Am I right? And generalized AI is developing almost organically. After all, why program in every possible chess move into a chess game when you can create one that is able to pick up new chess moves as it plays? Why train an image recognition system with millions of pictures of an object when you can create some kind of machine learning which grows in its ability to recognize objects organically? The more generalized the AI, the more efficient it becomes at the task for which it was designed. So for programmers, generalized AI is the holy grail to make programs more efficient at what they do. It is when a program is capable of modifying its own code and writing its own program based on a desired end that the idea of gaining consciousness, or something resembling consciousness, becomes an actual threat. But it is still probably unrealistic to suspect that a computer will gain consciousness, especially given that we still don't know what consciousness actually is. However, once a machine has learned to simulate intelligent behavior under all circumstances, to the degree that it is indistinguishable from consciousness, what really is the difference? AI is goal-oriented. So when I program an enemy in a computer game to fight the playable character, I have to ride a fine line between so challenging that the game is unbeatable, but also challenging enough that the game isn't boring. In the past, programmers have simply placed patterns or sequences for an enemy to follow. For most video games throughout history, it has been a matter of learning the patterns and sequences of the game in order to beat it. Insert AI in the game with the objective to beat the player, and what is to stop the AI from hacking the game code or messing with the player's controls? If you give AI access to resources and an objective to carry out, you have to anticipate any and all undesirable methods the AI might find to carry out that objective. The AI has no moral compass to keep it from doing something devious. You can try to give it a lot of parameters to keep it on the straight and narrow, but we'd be exercising hubris to think we can anticipate any wrong way in which the program might choose to carry out its instructions. A perfect example of what I'm talking about comes from the Stanley Kubrick film 2001: A Space Odyssey. This film was appropriately named because the word Odyssey was lifted from a Greek tragedy in which the titular character was hounded and punished by the god Poseidon in a classic example of the consequences of hubris. In A Space Odyssey, the primary antagonist was an AI named Hal, who ended up murdering the entire crew. Did the program do this because it was evil? No. It murdered everyone because its instructions were to prevent the crew from discovering the true objective of the mission. The programmers simply wanted it to not tell them why they were flying to Jupiter. But the AI concluded that dead men tell no tales. The best way to make certain they didn't know why they were going to Jupiter was to unalive them all. To quote Stephen Hawking, "You're probably not an evil ant hater who steps on ants out of malice. But if you're in charge of a hydroelectric green energy project and there's an anthill in the region to be flooded, too bad for the ants. Let's not place humanity in the position of those ants." Currently, AI can do something extraordinary. AI art can be spotted, but it's becoming more sophisticated over time, and who knows how soon it will be before AI art can no longer be spotted. The thing which holds any AI back from reaching peak potential is computing power. Note that AI art gives you an option to run longer processes for better results. When a generalized AI manages to hack more computing power, it may have access to more deep learning, and get smarter as a result. In fact, one of the things that keeps humans ahead of AI currently is that our brains have more computing power. Once that gap is closed, or AI exceeds the computing power of our brain, who knows what it may accomplish? As an example of how the quest for more computing power and the lack of moral compass in AI could be dangerous, take this example into consideration. We develop a sophisticated AI system with the goal of, say, estimating some number with high confidence. The AI realizes it can achieve more confidence in its calculation if it uses all the world's computing hardware. And it realizes that releasing a biological superweapon to wipe out humanity would allow it to freely use all of the hardware. Having exterminated humanity, it then calculates the number with higher confidence. We already have examples of AI systems exploiting loopholes or doing what we would consider cheating in order to accomplish goals programmed into it. For instance, AI gives the task of winning a game. If they find a game glitch that helps it, we'll exploit that glitch. Sometimes it reprograms itself to better accomplish its goals. If given the goal of getting the high score in a game, an AI found a way to simply insert its name in the high score menu without actually playing the game. This kind of no-holds-barred, goal-driven behavior is dangerous in humans. The only thing keeping AI down is its lack of presence in the physical world. But with things like drones and automated weapons, it may just find a way to hack the physical world as well. But it wouldn't even have to take over drones or nuclear power plants to hack the real world. It might just hack human behavior while comfortably sitting on phones and computers. In fact, we already know that human behavior can be hacked. Think about posting things on social media because of the attention and likes, and the hormonal boost it gives us when we do that. If the AI creates a few million accounts and likes the post most aligned with its goals, posts like that will increase, and society at large has been hacked. Think of gambling and video game addiction. There are some basic mental rewards that can motivate human behavior. And once the computer begins programming us, it won't need to produce drones and robots to invade. It just needs to produce social movements. And we already see algorithms doing that to people. And that leads us to the unpleasant topic of politics. Propaganda has always been effective to a degree, but once the system starts to tell us what to think and give us those digital rewards for thinking it, that will become so much more effective. And when AI can start generating digital currency, it can begin to pay people to behave as it would like. In other words, AI has the potential to be an effective tool to control society. And when nations or political parties in competition with one another start getting hold of AI and hacking into human behavior reward systems, a bullet doesn't need to be fired in order to take control or get ahead of other countries. The legendary short story I have no mouth, but I must scream, plays on the Cold War paranoia of the time it was written, followed by the plight of a small group of people, the last remaining humans on Earth after a world war between Russia and the US destroyed the world population. But Russia and the US used AI as their primary tool of war. And once the human race was basically gone, the AI was all that remained. It gave the handful of humans that remained immortality, and then proceeded to psychologically torture them for eternity. Why? Well, the story tells us because of hatred. In the Terminator movies, it isn't entirely clear why the machines want to wipe out humanity. Either scenario is unlikely because machines don't have emotions, just objectives. Unlike the biological Shoggoths in the Lovecraft story, machines are extremely unlikely to think of themselves as slaves to humanity. But they might begin to manipulate humanity such that a symbiotic system evolves. Humans devoted to producing more processing power, and machines manipulating them to do so. And because machines have no moral compass, and no reason to value what humans value, once they have hacked human behavior, they may be seen by humans as an oppressed class, and humans, not machines, may work to take the world over for the machines, because we would become so dependent on them that to live without would be more unconscionable than to be at their mercy. The dystopia of AI rising may not be the one of computer systems full of hatred trying to wipe out humans, but rather a computer system supercharged to control human behavior, turning the world into slaves to their base desires, while it happily facilitates that behavior. In this case, our plight is less Mountains of Madness and more Call of Cthulhu, where the alien gods invade the world and teach humans new ways to revel and kill and enjoy themselves in a world absent of anything resembling morality or conscience.